In this video, we're going to explain the application platform for Windows Phone 7. Right here, we're showing you Visual Studio 2010, and we're going to open it up. Let's start by opening a new project. Choose Windows Phone 7 application, and let us name it as Phone App Demo. As you can see, we have both Windows Phone OS 7.0 and 7.1 installed. Let us choose version 7.0 and click OK. Now we can see the default application structure. You can see we have a design view which shows application's default user interface in Phone Emulator. To its right is the markup of the application, which uses XAML. On the extreme right-hand side are the properties of the project. In Properties, you see we have app.xaml. This is the starting application file, which holds the key information responsible for loading and managing the lifetime of the project. It has the application element, and inside in it, we can see it has further application resource elements for holding any resources, as an example, styles, dictionaries, etc. for the application. Next is the application lifetime objects, which holds information that can be maintained by the application class till the end of the lifetime of this application or until another application is running. Now let's open its code behind the file. As we can see, it is an app class inherited from application class. Next is the application's root frame class object. This will load the main page.xaml. Constructor class includes all the application-related initialization stuff. It also subscribes to some of the application events. The following are the methods which are triggered once an application is loaded into the false memory. Application launching method gets called when the application is launched. Next comes application activated method, which gets called when the application is loaded. Similarly, application deactivated function is called when an application is about to close, so that before closing, it gets deactivated. In this phase, all events are released and allocated memory is released back to the operating system. The application gets prepared for the next phase, which is application closing. Application closing method is called, finally, and the application closes. In case of navigation failure, like not finding the page or the window which the application is trying to open, method root frame navigation failed is called by the application. Basically, the moment the application is about to break, this event is triggered. Next is method unhandled exception, which gets called when any application occurs which is not programmed to be handled in the code. After this is application-specific initialization. Initialize phone application method is called when the phone application is initialized. Within this method, phone application frame is triggered. Similarly, other events are registered here. Next is complete initialize phone application method, and it is called once the initialization event is completed, and if we need to set some variables. Next, we have application images, which will be displayed once the application is loaded in the phone emulator. Similarly, the background image. Final image in the project structure is splash screen, which has a clock image. It is displayed before our application is loaded in the emulator. Now let's open the main page.xaml again. On the design view of the application, if we select any controls with the mouse click, we can get the corresponding element highlighted in the XAML. Similarly, if we add any control from the toolbox to the UI view, the markup view on the right-hand side is immediately updated. Let's understand the markup now. Starting from the top, we have phone element, and it is derived from Microsoft.PhoneControl.PhoneApplicationPage class, which is the base class for developing the user interface, or UI. The name of this class is MainPage. It is indicated from the X:class attribute in XAML. Next is the XML namespace for the presentation, and XElement is another extension for this namespace. The phone element includes the phone controls references. The namespace referred is Microsoft.Phone.Controls, and the assembly is Microsoft.Phone. Similarly is shell namespace, which is used for working with applications shell. D represents namespace for designer and refers to blend namespace. It is used for designer view only and not for code or runtime view. The design view on the left is supported by this namespace. This is why it is ignored later in the markup. MC stands for markup compatibility, and this namespace is used for providing markup validation to the .NET compiler. The ignorable D means we are ignoring D, and it has no effect at runtime. D for designer namespace is again used for providing design views, design height, and width. As we mentioned earlier, this will not only impact the design view and is not applicable during execution. Font family is statically linked to the phone's available fonts, and the size is normal size again. Foreground is phone foreground brush. These are declared by default in Windows application. Supported orientations. Orientation stands for the view in terms of aspect ratio of the screen. Orientations are of basically two types. This is to say landscape and portrait. By default, it's set to portrait shape. If you want to change, you can set any option from the available options. Last, from the markup namespace, is shell.systemtray.isVisible equals true. This setting displays or hides the system tray or a toolbar which is available on the bottom of the application at the time of execution. Shortly, we will see how it works. The body of the markup starts from grid named Layout Root, and its background is transparent. This grid has two rows and is mentioned as row definitions. The first row is marked as auto, which means that the height of this row shall be the height of its children controls. It will automatically fit the child's height. The next row definitions, equating to asterisk, means the remaining size of the layout. Basically, the height of the second row will be the height of the layout root, excluding the height of the first row, that is the height of the child controls. Next control in the markup is stack panel. The moment we select it in the XAML view, it reflects in the design view as well. The name of this stack panel is title panel, with rows set to 0, which means this controls will appear on the first row of the grid height set to auto and according to the margin set. Next, set the text to My First Application. We have the page title as page name. Inside this stack panel, we have two text boxes. Orientation is set to vertical by default, hence you see My First Application on the top and the page name on the bottom. Next is another grid which is used to create other controls if required in the center area of the user interface. The name of this grid is Content Panel, which is used to position controls in the center area of the grid. The row property is set to 1, which means that it will be placed on the second row of the layout root grid, leaving the area for the first row. We have learned about the default user interface of the Windows Phone application. Now let's run this code and see what it looks like. Press the F5 key or the green play button inside the Visual Studio. Now Windows Phone emulator has launched and is loading the application. You can see that the phone emulator has loaded the application, which shows the application title as My First Application and the application description as page name and the empty body of the application. Now close the emulator. Let's talk about the application bar. By default, an application bar is provided by the project template, but it is commented. In order to use it, let us uncomment it. The moment we uncomment, it gets visible on the emulator view. As you see, we have 2 menu items and their respective icons. Let's run it. Here we have the application bar. It has 2 buttons and 2 menu items as Menu Item 1 and Menu Item 2. You can select menu items individually. This is how an application bar is applied. This was all about markup. Let us inspect the code behind the file of this application. Open the mainpage.xaml.cs class file. We can see here the partial class has been inherited from the phone application page class. We need to keep adding functionality to this class according to the requirements of the application. We will continue learning about Windows Phone 7 platform in subsequent videos. Thanks for watching.